Why would a woman with no identification, who doesn't utter a single word, possess sniper skills reserved for only the most elite operators? In Telluride, Colorado, she was a silent shadow at the shooting range, hitting every target beyond the reach of civilian equipment. No one knew her name, no one knew why she came. Yet 10 minutes later, everyone sensed she did not belong to the ordinary world. When she was handcuffed, no one objected. When she refused to identify herself, no one questioned it. But when a Navy Admiral personally appeared in the small-town courthouse, everyone snapped to attention. What truly happened among the Rocky Mountains that morning? And why did someone like her, quiet, anonymous, cause the entire system to pivot in an instant? All right, friends, this is a story of honor forgotten, of those who walk among us yet never seek recognition. If something in this tale moves you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. And let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing you from every corner of the world. The Telluride shooting range was as silent as ever. The woman arrived that morning, alone, not a word spoken. Her left hand carried a large weapons case. Her right gripped the brim of her low-slung cap. A gray coat fell to her knees, her stride steady, unhurried. She chose the farthest lane, apart from everyone else. No questions asked, no instruction needed. Jake Harmon, the range manager, watched from the control room, eyes fixed on the monitor. He'd served as a SEAL and seen every sort of shooter, but within 10 minutes, he knew. She was different. Each movement precise, every gesture bore the mark of long-trained discipline. No boasting, no hesitation. She fired, as if she'd done it 1,000 times, each shot with a purpose. Her rifle steadied. She made tiny adjustments, inhaled deeply, held for a beat, then squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew true, not a hair's breadth off. She paused, gauged the wind, adjusted her aim. Again. Bullseye. 800 yards was nothing. What Jake saw was skill honed by rigid discipline and a reason heavy as lead. That accuracy wasn't mere talent. It was forged in a past he couldn't name, but felt in her silence. Jake couldn't look away. He'd served on missions where a single breath's mistake cost lives, and he saw that here. The way she handled the rifle, not as a tool, but as something bound to her through unspoken moments. She did not tremble, did not waver. Her hands never tired. Each reload, each press of cheek to stock, carried a solemn weight, like a ritual known only to her, as if every round was part of a confession no one would hear. There was no chatter, only the metallic click, the crack of rounds slicing the air, and the long hush that followed. She never glanced around, paid no mind to anyone nearby. She had come as if indifferent to stares or judgment. Jake realized she wasn't here to train or prove anything. She was reclaiming a fragment of memory, one deeply rooted in her very bones. Occasionally she paused, sat motionless for minutes, eyes still at the scope, yet clearly not tracking a target, seeming instead to stare beyond it, toward a place where her rifle had once been the only thing keeping her alive. Jake understood that gaze, the look of someone who'd lost something irreplaceable, a survivor, forever changed. She resumed firing, each shot seeming to shed an invisible weight. After a while, she dismantled her rifle, each step careful, as if packing away a loved one's relic. Her movements were practiced yet haunting. Each latch clicked shut, each cover closed, as though sealing a door she would never exit. Jake remained seated, stunned. He'd seen many shooters excel, but what held his gaze wasn't technique. It was the stillness in her every action. Not the silence of a marksman, but the silence of someone who'd stepped from a place where no one spoke and carried it with her through life. She stood, without looking back, lifted her weapons case and turned away, back straight, steps sure, as if she didn't care who watched. Or perhaps, as if she already knew someone was watching. Not to judge, but to know. She had returned. Not to stay, but to prove she still could. Jake rose slowly, resting his hands on the desk, quietly. He did not know her name. He did not know why she had come. But he knew this: she had once been part of the world he knew, and without a word, he felt a kinship only those who've carried a rifle in silence could understand. When the 2 county officers arrived, the air around the shooting range grew heavy, as if something had just been roused. They moved quickly, voices firm, carrying a reflexive suspicion. She remained seated in the same spot, hands resting lightly on her knees, her gaze utterly steady. No papers, no ID, weapons unregistered in any system. They questioned her. She stayed silent. No denial, no explanation, only a direct stare, as though none of their questions applied. Those eyes, strangely calm, seemed to hold back another conversation, elsewhere, with someone not present here. She rose when signaled. No resistance, no queries. Her gaze stayed fixed on the distant mountains, where the Rockies sliced the horizon like an unhealed seam. She looked up not from curiosity or unease, but as if calculating, remapping from memory, something unfinished, not yet time to conclude. Handcuffs clicked onto her wrists with a cold, muted clink that Jake heard clearly. He stood behind the glass, saying nothing. Years in the service had taught him that silence can be the only thing keeping a person from being swept away. And in that moment, Jake knew something was wrong. He studied her as she walked between the officers. No panic, no anger, no show of defiance, just quiet resolve, as though completing the final task of the day. There was something familiar in her stride, as if he'd seen it on a military tarmac among nameless faces. One officer spoke again. She did not answer, only tilted her head slightly, eyes still on the mountains. They assumed she was uncooperative, but Jake understood she was not silent out of defiance, but out of deliberate thought, measuring each next step not for herself, but for something larger. Perhaps a person, perhaps a memory, perhaps a mission, left unfulfilled. They guided her into the patrol car. The motion was firm but not rough. She did not react. Her back remained straight, her eyes never leaving that mountain range. Moments before the door closed, she turned her head, her gaze sweeping the dense silence, memorizing this place one last time. Not the shooting range, but the position, the distance, the wind's direction. Details only a battle-hardened soul would note. Jake stayed where he was. No one paid him any mind, and he did not intend to speak. His old instincts surged, heating his chest as though heavy stones pressed upon it. Not out of fear for her danger, but because she should not be led away like this, in handcuffs, under suspicious stares. He remembered how she handled her rifle, deliberate, unshaking, unfaltering. He remembered her unblinking aim, the cloak of stillness that shrouded her, as if she'd stepped out of a world where no one spoke, and carried it always. Such qualities did not belong to a criminal, but to someone who once bore arms for reasons far greater than themselves. Someone who never acted without control, who did not come here by chance, who did not carry unregistered weapons for show. The engine started. She did not look back, not even once at Jake. But he knew that even if she had, Her eyes would have spoken no more. She'd already said everything with her silence, with her shooting, with that final glance toward the mountains as if scanning her own memory. The control room window reflected Jake's aged face, his eyes deep and grave. He stood motionless, not out of duty, but because a part of him felt torn from his body along with her silhouette. Who she was, he still didn't know. But what haunted Jake was not her identity, but why she had come here, quietly, expertly, leaving behind no questions except the question of her very presence. And he understood. Some stories need never be told aloud to linger in the mind for a lifetime. In the Cambria County courtroom, she sat upright, hands folded neatly on her lap, her gaze unwavering. The gray coat remained on her shoulders, as though circumstances had never stripped it away. Her name was absent from the records. The charges were read aloud, each line echoing through an atmosphere thick with judgment. She did not react, did not look around, did not wince, as if the accusations had no purchase on her mind, no sign of fear, no hint of defense. Outside, no one knew who she was, and her silence only deepened suspicion. A woman with no identity, bearing unregistered weapons, appearing alone at the range, then arrested without uttering a word. What, if not a dangerous mystery? Yet she sat there, no plea for mercy, no protest, as though everything were unfolding in its rightful order. Then the rear door of the courtroom opened. The hinge creaked softly, yet it turned every head. An older man entered, tall, silver-haired, clad in a formal uniform adorned with ribbons that glinted quietly under the lights. No introduction required, no title spoken. Every veteran in the room rose to attention, unspoken but unanimous. They knew. He was a SEAL admiral, a living emblem, a witness to things beyond ordinary view. He strode directly before the judge, without glancing her way or pausing for anyone else. In his hand, a sealed file, its top corner embossed with a deep red seal. He placed it on the bench. He said nothing. He offered no explanation. The judge opened the file, skimmed, then paused, his eyes slowly shifting to her. Silence fell between those who held life and death authority. The judge's initial doubt transformed in seconds into solemn respect. All charges were dismissed. No debate, no dispute, just a single definitive pronouncement sealing the case. Closed, no further inquiry, no record retained. She remained seated, silent, showing no relief, no reaction, as though she had foreseen this outcome, or perhaps never believed she needed anyone's pardon. A whisper stirred from the back row, 3 words that rippled through the courtroom. Commander Marlowe. Her true name at last spoken, not by her, but by those recalling old rumors of a secret SEAL officer, no public record, no credited achievements, yet ever present on the fiercest missions where others might not return. Elise Marlowe, a name surviving only in fragmented conversations among seasoned soldiers. Each retelling differed, but one truth remained. She never failed, and no one knew when she disappeared. The Admiral made no sound, but as he turned, his eyes rested on her in a moment conveying what words could not: gratitude, respect, and an unspoken remorse. She stood, no signal given, no one intervened. Her steps deliberate yet steady, as if she'd left countless rooms like this one, where every gaze awaited an explanation she would never offer. No one asked her to identify herself. No one detained her. She walked straight out, never looking back, never bidding farewell. Yet those left behind remained at attention until the door closed entirely. The courtroom felt strangely empty afterward, not for want of people, but because her departure carried something ineffable with it. A wind stirring memories of those who'd served, an unseen nod among souls who'd once teetered on the brink of life and death. No one asked why she came to the range, or why she carried unregistered arms. Such questions no longer mattered. For that woman, Elise Marlowe, had nothing left to explain. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax, or grab a glass of water, then settle in for the rest of this surprising tale. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see people joining us from all corners of the globe. Comment 1 if you're enjoying the story, so we can keep bringing you more great narratives. When she stepped out of the courthouse, not a word was spoken, but every eye followed her, not with curiosity, but with an ancient, profound silence. Officers, detectives, even veterans present that day, all instinctively saluted as she passed. No one ordered it. No one warned in advance. They simply did what their hearts and their shared past compelled. She offered no verbal reply. She didn't pause, only gave a slight tilt of her head, a gesture nearly imperceptible, yet enough for each person to feel. She acknowledged them, and she remembered. Detective Ryan Burke, the very man who had handcuffed Elise at the shooting range, stood there, hands clasped unconsciously. He did not know what to call what had just happened. A correction? A lesson? Or merely a brief cut from a vast picture he had never fully seen? Ryan was not to blame. No one demanded his apology. Yet he knew he had touched something he should not have, not out of wrongdoing, but out of ignorance. Ignorance that there are people living in the shadows not to hide, but to protect. A few days later, he received an invitation to a ceremony at SEAL Base Coronado. No formal letter, just a brief phone call, a low, clear, decisive voice. But something in the way they spoke his name made refusal impossible. Coronado, a name that sounds like any ordinary naval base, yet to those who served, it is sacred ground, a place that forged nameless warriors whose worth was measured by missions completed, not by medals earned. The ceremony was held in a secured area, with no press, only those who truly belonged. Sharp uniforms, eyes that had witnessed the unimaginable. Ryan sat in the back row, surrounded by people he had known only through files. No speeches, no introductions. They had nothing to prove to one another. Then Elise stepped forward. No uniform, no makeup, just a dark blue shirt, hair neatly tied back. Yet her eyes, those same deep, unwavering eyes, spoke volumes. She did not deliver the speech herself. An officer who had served beside her in the operation known as Blue Whisper did. Blue Whisper, a major counter-terrorism operation on American soil. No press coverage, no headline on television, but one that saved thousands of lives. And throughout that entire campaign, Elise had been the linchpin. No one outside the task force knew. No one inside was permitted to reveal it. Ryan sat, holding his breath as he listened, unable to fathom that the silent woman he'd once handcuffed had single-handedly led a team into a sprawling terrorist network on the West Coast. She had infiltrated, gathered intelligence, and directly commanded the strikes that extinguished threats simmering within the city. No bouquets, no framed commendations, only a small, nondescript insignia, a black emblem without number or name, reserved only for those who dived deepest into the darkness. Elise accepted the insignia without a word, just as she had with her rifle at the range, just as she had upon leaving the courtroom. Actions without words, and it is that very quietness that stirs the heart. As she passed, Ryan rose to his feet and saluted, this time not to atone, but to acknowledge his understanding. He no longer saw a suspect, nor even a legend. He saw a woman who bore burdens no one had forced upon her, and chose silence not out of fear, but out of loyalty. When the ceremony ended, Elise departed immediately. No photographs, no lingering. Everyone there understood. Her presence was a rare gift, one that would not be repeated. Ryan watched her vehicle disappear into the distance, unsure if he would ever see her again. Yet in his heart, and in the memories of all who were present that day, the name Elise Marlowe was etched into a place beyond reach, a place where honor is not spoken, but lived. Everything seemed to have closed after the coronado ceremony, but in truth, it had only just begun. Ryan Burke returned to the county sheriff's office with an indescribable feeling. He performed his duties as before, but his eyes now saw events in a different light. Not merely black and white, right and wrong, but in complex shades of gray, where one can sacrifice everything without demanding recognition. Then, one day he received a call. No caller ID. A calm, unhurried, yet unmistakable voice. They made no mention of Elise, and needed none. They asked only, "Are you willing to work for the things that cannot be spoken of?" Ryan understood. This was not about intelligence or agents. They spoke of an unrecorded sphere of operations, always present, never documented, a realm for those no longer in the system, yet still bound by duty. He nodded. From that moment, Ryan became the liaison for special operations groups. No name tags, no rank, yet granted silent authority to make decisions known only to a few. His role was not to command, but to connect. To stand between two worlds, where the law ends and ideals begin. Meanwhile, Jake Harmon, the range manager, also received an invitation. Unofficial, unwritten, simply a brief meeting with the man who had once commanded him. No explicit request, only, "We need you to continue doing what you do best, but this time, for those who have no name." Jake understood immediately. Those kingpins of the covert world were off the books, not deployable by any government agency, yet still alive, still dangerous, still in need of a place to hone their skills. And Telluride Range, where many silent battles began, now became their refuge. Jake changed nothing. He still opened on time, still inspected every weapon, every magazine, but he began to welcome guests who never signed the log. They needed no guidance. They arrived, trained in silence, and departed as if they'd never been there. He observed each silhouette, each stance, each way they held their rifles, exhaled, squeezed the trigger, and he realized every one carried a piece of the past, folded carefully like an invisible cloak. No one spoke of it, yet a network formed. No charts, no rules, only understanding without explanation. Ryan worked remotely, liaising with former task forces, alerting Jake when someone needed the range. And Jake, with his intuition and experience, screened, directed, and watched over them like a sentinel. No one paid them, yet none departed empty-handed. A bullet striking dead center, a nod, or a wordless look of thanks. Telluride was no longer an ordinary range. It became a crossroads between past and present, between those who fought for ideals and those who keep the flame alive. Every shot fired, there was no longer mere practice. It was a reminder, a silent oath. Sometimes, Ryan visited Jake. They sat together in silence, watching the familiar muted shapes pass by. They asked no names. They needed no reasons. A glance at how someone gripped the gun, breathed, aimed, and they understood. Where that person had been, what they had lost, and why they still stood firm today. That network had no master. It existed as a natural response of those who had walked through war, no organization, no budget, yet bound by discipline and honor. And at its heart was Elise Marlowe. She did not give orders, nor did she appear often, yet her name was the golden thread running through it all, unspoken, yet known by every one of them. If anyone could see through the smoke and keep ideals alive, it was she. And Jake and Ryan, each in his place, continued their work without appointment, not for fame, but because they understood. Some things must be protected even when no one speaks their names. Months after the Coronado ceremony, the Telluride Range still opened its gates in silence as before. Jake Harmon remained the first to arrive and the last to leave each day. He needed no appointment. Those who needed the range knew how to find it on their own. That morning, a young woman stepped inside, said nothing, asked nothing, simply left her required paperwork, then quietly chose the farthest lane. She carried a large weapons case. Her movements were precise, her shoulders squared, her gaze unwavering. Jake did not immediately approach. He watched from afar. Something in the way she loaded her rifle, inhaled, adjusted her sight made his heart tighten, not because she was a skilled shooter, that much was obvious, but because of tiny details only those who've lived in the old world recognize. The length of her breath, the steadiness in each trigger pull, the way her eyes never left the target as if in conversation with it. She required no witness, nor sought attention. But Jake understood. People like her didn't come to learn to shoot. They came to validate themselves, to confirm that what lay within them, though worn down by time, trauma, and silence, had not been entirely lost. He pulled out his phone, not to report, but to send a short audio clip over a secured channel known only to a few. One of the successors has arrived. No reply came. But he knew that somewhere, the one who needed to know had heard. Jake did not ask her name. She did not introduce herself. When she finished, she stowed her rifle, inclined her head in a brief salute, and departed. Each step firm yet light, as though leaving no trace. But for Jake, the imprint was profound. Just as when he first met Elise. Elise Marlowe had vanished from every record. No trace remained. No residence. No phone number. No social media. Yet no one believed she was dead. For someone like Elise does not disappear. They transform. They slip into silence to continue living by what once gave them life, protection. No one knows where Elise went, but her footprints remain, not on the ground, but in the way young women like that one appear, quietly, autonomously, steadfastly. They carry no real name, no documented achievements, only a mission, not assigned, but chosen. And that network continues to operate, no leader, no headquarters, yet powerful. Each member is a silent guardian of balance for a nation that often does not even know who protects it. Jake knew he was not the center of any grand design. He was merely a link, small, silent, yet necessary. He asked few questions, never detained anyone longer than needed, but with every shot fired at the range, he listened to the rhythm, the aim, and to what hid behind that precision. It was not just technique, it was history, choice, and something ordinary people would never fully grasp. They did not come to prove anything. They came to be ready. For if one day the country needed them, they would need no reminder of who they are. Jake watched the young woman fade behind the gate. His hand lightly touched the old badge in his pocket, a non-issuable insignia, but ever present as a reminder. He did not know how many more would follow in her footsteps, but he was certain. As long as there remained one such person, Elise Marlowe would live on, not in form, but in the responsibility carried forward without words. There are battles that need no gunfire, warriors who never mount the podium of honor, but they are the ones who keep the light alive in the darkness. Dear friends, if you've followed this story to the very end, thank you, because each view, each share, ensures that these silent guardians are not forgotten. They do not need praise, but they do need to be known. If this story has touched you, please subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and pass it on to your family and friends in the US. We'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is. Perhaps you're somewhere far away, but our shared belief in the silent makes us closer than ever.